Hey there, I'm Paul with B Pro, and welcome to Campaign Spelunking. Usually there's a little intro thing. We're not doing that today, guys? Okay. Well, anyway, today on Campaign Spelunking, we're going to go ahead and go through 3 different campaigns. We're going to continue on with this batch of campaigns that were built well over a decade ago, back in 2012. And we're going to be going through campaign 60, 64, and 66. So what happened to 62 here? Well, apparently there is a campaign 62, and I deleted that model forever ago, right after campaign 60. So in any case, let's go ahead and dive right into it. And the theme of today is engagement automation. We're going to see how each of these was using automation around the engagement. So let's go ahead and start by looking at cave number 60 here. Okay, so again, we're seeing these old traffic sources, which they help point out to what this customer journey is looking like. So we know that there's going to be some trade shows, and so if somebody gets a list from a trade show, we can import them and put them into this pre-qualify sequence here. Otherwise, there's leads that people can request more info. So I would probably do some mechanism like this at the trade show. Have like a tablet or something where people can go ahead and submit the stuff right there at the trade show booth, or give them a QR code to go to that particular form and request more info here. So what's cool about this is that we are starting to use sales stage automation, which you can send. We know it's this because of the yellow icons here. So basically, people were coming in, we would qualify them. They'd move to a presentation being scheduled, and the presentation's delivered. Don't know why I said it weird like that. And then after the presentation, I guess if they still want to go, then there's some kind of docs, and then they move to one. Because I guess once we have account docs, then there's some kind of account needed. Is there anything in here? No. So like with previous ones, these are probably going to be empty because these were just conceptualizing with the clients at the time. And there's a couple interesting things that I see here. So for example, it says pre-qualifier form internal, but it's not pointing to anywhere. So I guess my question would be, were we just collecting information about somebody being qualified in here? Because in theory, that would pull them out of this sequence. But this does say now to create an opportunity in the pipeline as well, which we have modeled this out. So this is interesting. So we are creating an opportunity as well as a task here. Now, an opportunity is almost like a rolling task. It continues to show up on the calendar until the opportunity is marked as win or lost, or it's closed effectively. So if we were to do this today, I probably would not have tasks here. If anything, we'd create the opportunity and then maybe have an internal email notification that goes to the owner, for example, that says, hey, you've got an opportunity here. The only case would be if requesting more info required, like maybe physically sending or something like that. But even then, those can go in the opportunity notes here. So this is also interesting because we have a floating move to lost here. And you'll notice that it's using different icons here, which I'm not sure where these images are pulling from because they're a little different. But that's super cool. You can see they are still all of the type for a stage move. So the other thing too is looking at the structure here. So if we zoom out a little bit, you can see that it goes from stage to stage to stage to stage to stage, right? Which that's what's supposed to happen. And all of these guys here have this little person symbol, meaning that it's an entry point. So if somebody was not in the campaign at this point, then we would move them to over here. So for example, you move someone to presentation scheduled, they would get moved into here. Now this is interesting. Just by moving somebody into presentation scheduled, we can't schedule reminders around that unless we know for a fact what the appointment time is, which we don't. So today, if we wanted to do this, we would likely do something where there's just like there is an internal form here for the pre-qualification. Again, not sure what exactly that would do, but having an internal form for scheduling the appointment reminder and then the submission of that form can be what actually moves somebody into presentation scheduled here. So it's interesting. Again, we go up this chain here. Now, if we were to do automation, I would recommend, not if we're going to do, when we're doing automation around stage pipelines, I'd recommend using a ladder type structure. So we're not going to modify this, but the idea would be when somebody moves into a stage, whatever stage X is, then of course there's some kind of automation, then they would move out of stage X, and we would kind of repeat this structure for every stage. And so that's why we kind of talk about a ladder configuration here, because the whole point is this automation needs to stop as soon as they're moved out of the stage. Doesn't necessarily matter where they move to, but if I were doing this today, I'd probably do a ladder structure. And again, this was also conceptualizing what they can do at the time. So looking at the engagement, though, we're seeing that as they move and engage through the sales process, even if they don't show, there's a note here to basically, I'm assuming this would be an interesting data point that they didn't show, but there'd still be an opportunity for them to like follow up with it. So if anything, it'd be no show, maybe send them an opportunity to reschedule, and go from there. But anyway, this is this pipeline-based type of engagement here. So let's go ahead and look at the next cave. That was cave number 60. This is going to be cave 64. So talking about engagement here, we can see that it's actually a really similar structure to what we've seen in the past. So we know that, again, in this case, they're going to be driving via Facebook and website to this form where they can request, I guess, 5 image mistakes. However, they do have their existing list that they wanted to bring in. So they would import their list, tag the people as a warm lead, and then we would invite them to do the same thing as if they had filled out the form. Today, we may still want to do some segmenting to tag them as a warm lead, but we probably wouldn't need the tag itself. We can still import the list, pull the segment that we want, and then just manually put that segment into this particular sequence. Now here's what's interesting. We're saying, hey, go ahead and get these 5 mistakes. They click a link. It says, oh, great, we'll send it to you. And then it goes into the delivery here, which, again, because this was a concept model, we're not doing a whole lot there, just explaining that we're going to deliver it. We're going to go ahead and give them the PDF. And once they download it, then we'll go ahead on following up with them on that exact piece. At the end of the road, we do want them to provide a phone number to schedule a consultation here. It's interesting how this is not connected. It probably would need to be connected, and there's probably things in between here, and we just didn't get to that point in the conversation. And so that's likely why there's nothing in here. But at the end of the road, we want them to give us their phone number so we can now follow up with them. So here's what's interesting. We noticed that if they download the PDF, we follow up with them, and there's a note in here of at least sending 5 emails talking about the expertise on each mistake. Now this is a good messaging strategy. If you have X number of things for whatever, just X number of things, in theory, each one of those things is the perfect excuse to send out an email. So if you're like, hey, here's 50 tools that I use, okay, you could in theory write 50 emails talking about each and every single tool, of course, until they move ahead and engage with the automation. Now what's interesting here is that whether they download the PDF or not, they both get, and in both cases, they end up in this free consultation promotion. And then we're, of course, inviting them to give us their phone number. They do have to click to give us the phone number in the first place. And so if they do click, but they don't give it to us, we'll follow up with them. What's interesting is the way that this is structured, this line is not necessary. This would be redundant. Now, how come this line's redundant, but this one isn't? Well, this is going from sequence to sequence. So it's basically saying at the end of this sequence, if somebody hasn't moved any further ahead in the process, go ahead and start this other one, right? Which is what we want. In this case, because this is a sequence pointing to a goal, as long as there is a pathway from this sequence through to that, we actually don't need this line. And this would function the exact same way, because at the end of the day, we want them to provide their phone number. And this is an entry point as well, because there may be other marketing activities to get people to say, yes, I want to talk to you. Here's my phone number. And then this schedule consult process would kick into gear. I'm going to go ahead and hit revert changes to just undo this piece here. One cool thing about this revert changes feature is that it only works for the structure of the campaign. It doesn't work for any of the content, any of the emails, this kind of stuff. The other thing you can do, if you're not aware of, is using this save aversion. So at any point in time, especially before you make any big changes to campaigns, to the model itself, you may want to save a version, because then you can always restore back to it. With the revert changes, and this is hats off to Greg of MonkeyPod, he discovered that this is only with regards to once you open the campaign, any changes that are made until you close it again. So it's kind of like a session change, unless, of course, you save a version, then you would restore back to that. All right, that's Cave 64. So who knows what 62 is? No clue. But now let's get to the last one, 66. So talking all about engagement here. Now this is an interesting one. Here's some notes here from the coaching call, of course. It looks like this is a very simple engagement-based kind of thing. So on Facebook and Twitter, they're going to do daily social media broadcasts. Now, this is actually not functional. This was here just to show the idea that on Facebook and Twitter, they're going to be on social. They're going to be broadcasting regularly, right? Which actually had nothing to do with the campaign, but we needed to make sure that that's in there, because there's going to be some way for them to grow their list, I'm assuming, from these. So that's interesting. That's something that's missing from this cave here. There's some hand waving between doing these social broadcasts and then getting them onto your list. So that's interesting. But looking at, for people that are on the existing list, they're doing weekly broadcasts. And they do a wine tasting, I guess, each week in this case. So if you did click to the wine tasting from the email, we could follow up and say, hey, are you interested in that? Or in general, actually, are you interested in wine tasting in general? And then if they say, yes, I am, we were going to tag them to segments exclusively the wine tasting segment of people. What we could also do today is, in today world, because again, this was made in like 2012, we can use a custom field for wine tasting, and let people choose their preferences. So they want to know about every wine tasting event, special events only, that kind of stuff. So it seems like this cave was mostly to segment their list based on the weekly event, and then if they actually, it looks like every Tuesday night was the event, if they did click to learn about it, then we'd follow up with some more promotion on that. And this would probably be a structure they would copy and clone for each broadcast. Now, could you do this in the actual broadcast thing? You could. You could have these be tag based, and then there's just, these broadcasts go from the broadcast section, the links are tagged, and then it kicks this off. I personally enjoy keeping it all together and just making clones of these. And so, for example, if they're doing weekly broadcasts, I would have one single campaign that's broadcasts for this year. And then next year, here's the broadcasts for next year. Because then we can look at the reporting, and we can see throughout the broadcasts, what are people clicking on, what are they doing, and then we can always dig into who did what. So anyway, that is 3 examples of engagement automation. Let me know what you think, and if you're going to do anything, you might as well be pro. Thanks for watching.